I'm gonna go see the new Star Wars movie with some friends, and of course I needed appropriate attire. So I got some Star Wars fabric and I made a dress. I took a dress that fits me well and that has a simple shape, and I used that to make a pattern. This is a pretty simple process. You just lay it out on some paper and trace around the seams. Do this for the front, the back and the sleeves. I wanted my dress to be a bit longer, so I extended the skirt. I could go straight to cutting fabric now, but I want to make use of the block pattern of the fabric. So I'm dividing the pattern pieces into several parts, where some will be the Star Wars fabric and some will be plain black. This is also pretty simple. You just decide where you want the divisions and cut your pattern there. The trickiest part is keeping track of all the pieces, so I marked each one with a number and the type of fabric. Then you add seam allowance around all the pieces so that you're able to sew them back together. I pinned my pattern pieces to the fabric and cut them out. For the Star Wars fabric I made sure to line the pieces up with the blocks. I'll start by sewing all the front and two back pieces back together. I'm using French seams everywhere here. They're quickly becoming my favorite type of seam for any fabric that frays. If you want the details on how to make a French seam, you can check out my tutorial video on it. With the main pieces done, I can now combine them into a dress. I like to start with the shoulder seams, so I did those first. Then I added the sleeves into the armholes. Oh no. You see what I did here? I put the sleeve into the neck hole. That's gonna be uncomfortable. How did that happen? Okay. Time for the seam ripper. Okay, now that that's fixed, I can continue by closing the sleeves and the side seams. I'm taking extra care to line up the seams under the arm and at the waistband here. I only know one way to sew a zipper, and it's a pretty simple technique, so that's the one I'm using. I first mark how long the zipper is. Then I stitch the seam below the zipper normally. In place of the zipper I sew a basting stitch. This is basically the longest straight stitch your machine can make. And in my case that's 5 mm. We'll be removing these stitches later on, and with a basting stitch that's just a lot less work. Press the seam open on the inside and then pin the zipper in place. Make sure to line the center of the zipper up with the center of the seam. I then stitch down one end of the zipper, across the bottom and back up the other side. And I try to keep an even distance all the way along. I'm using a zipper foot here, but if you don't have one, a regular one will do just fine. Now I can remove the basting stitches and the zipper is done. Now that it's starting to look like a dress, I can decide what to do with the neckline and the sleeves. I marked the shapes with pins and I cut the neckline to its new shape. I cut the sleeves to their new length and folded the edge over twice. I then stitched around the edge. I also folded the bottom of the skirt over twice and stitched it in place. Finally, I cut a piece of binding for the neckline. I pressed it down the middle and then pressed the edges towards the center line. I folded it open and sewed it to the inside of the dress. Then I folded it to the outside and stitched it in place close to the edge. Now I'm all ready for the premiere. This is the first dress I ever made and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. But it does have one small design flaw. Well, there's always room for improvement.